right.
We'll have to keep that conversation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Harper. I'm one of the co-coordinators of the 39th Dr. Michael T. Fagan Pan-African Student Leadership Conference. It is my distinct honor and privilege to be standing here before you today. It's been a busy day and a lot of interesting events have occurred. But the speaker I'm getting ready to bring to you is not only dynamic, but he is well versed in not just world cultures, but especially in the topic that he will be speaking to you all on. Mr. Abdulahi Osman is more than just a presenter. He's a good friend of Dr. Fagan's. He's becoming a good friend of mine. We are very excited to have him, so can we please give him a round of applause?
Yes. Thank you for the warm welcome. This is just is it only an honor for me, but also an honor for an African, as an African diaspora person. More important than that, I am really honored to speak in front of you, in front of a colleague, an alma mater who graduated from the same university that I've graduated, although he graduated many, many moons ago, Wayne State University. So we hail from the same place. And when he invited me, I was really honored, and I'm really honored to talk about the topic that I've been assigned to address today. I was asked to talk about the diversity and the similarities of the African cultures. First of all, I am from Somalia. I have done some research on Somalia. I have done some publication on Somalia. And one of the very first, or one of the most repeated question is, how can one of the luckiest societies in Africa, where people speak the same language, the same religion, the same this and the same that, can fall into this never-ending pit of darkness, conflict, to the level of the next 2 or 3 decades. Maybe what is Somaliness might only remain in the minds of older guys like myself and my brother sitting in the audience. In fact, the new generations, it is just a figmentation. There was a country called Somalia. It was used to be beautiful. In fact, I have a 12-year-old son of mine, and the conversation between myself and him is just sparkling. I'm like, did you play with a lion cub when you go to school? Really? Did you guys have light? And I'm like, I came from a city that had, used to have, a telephone booth and traffic lights and traffic, roundabouts and stuff like that. But to him, and many like him, are pretty much, saying that, no, that doesn't make sense. And I'm sure many of us, first generation, immigrants, face that problem, a disjoint between the comers from the continent and the ones who have, were born here. It is just, in fact, the whole concept of modernity, that your parents have always been behind the time, as I'm sure Dr. Fagan would attest to him and his parents were like, this ancient guy who is here, and I am this hip Wayne State graduate. It takes up until you reach age maybe 25, 30 to say, aha, he was making sense. So, this natural move of modernity naturally existing, then when you couple that with immigration, it becomes even more polarized. So this is just a little bit of sidewind of mine, and I'm one of the people who are worrying about what will happen to Somalis in the long run. But the point here is then this very fundamental question, profound question that says, how can a society, which is one of the luckiest among the African countries, have such a problem and then that tells you that we have accepted a norm or a theory that says that sameness equals stability, development, and what have you, and this whole uncouth, uncivilized, the concept of ethnicity, or what the Greeks would call ethnikos, is someone who's behind the time and doesn't have any idea. So our whole view from the diaspora, hence the African Americans and the enslaved Africans, and the ones who were in the continent, have always been two different paradigms. I've traveled extensively to Tanzania several times. From Mount Kilimanjaro, Arusha area, to Dar es Salaam, it's just a corridor, like about 8 hours drive. You will see about 5, 6 different distinct languages. You have the Chaga, you do have the Meru, and these are people who just are not even that far from each other. But then again, you come here, you drive like maybe 2 days, go from one part of the country to go to another country of the country, people more or less look the same, they dress the same, they eat the same McDonald's, there is this cookie cutter approach to humanity. But, and in this 8-hour drive between these two cities, which are not that far apart, you will see about 5, 6 different distinct languages. So this then should, and in Somalia, despite the fact that we say there is a diversity in linguistics, we have about more or less 13 different living languages, but then again, because in the end of World War I, one of the things that was happening was that a push of Pan-Africanism, mainly driven from the Africans in the diaspora, which says like that we do need a strong, militant, looking for their rights in the form of Garvey, in the form of W.E.B. Du Bois, and all of these people. Pretty much what they were talking about was that looking for one African, because over the years what had been lost was the distinct ethnic group, ethno-linguistic group, norms, religions, and everything. And it was inadvertently, by the way, those who were the enslavers didn't want to create this group who are the same language, but inadvertently that was the outcome. To them, it never meant anything more than you own a human being, an economic vehicle, and what have you. But the outcome had become homogenized people who speak more or less the same language and view the same thing. On the other hand, Somalia, or the continent of Africa, I came from a country where roughly I can speak the same language from one corner of the country to another. Yet, although I might not be distinguished in terms of color or the way I look or the way I speak, yet I cannot fit in certain parts of my own country. Now, where is this disjoint coming from? And by the way, this is a classical issue whereby, for example, the foundation of the what is African Union today, and in the 1960s was Organization of African Union, which was just pretty much Pan-Africanist versus Africans. The Pan-Africanists looking unity and what have you, W. Du Bois and his pupils, including Kwame Nkrumah and others, who are saying, my God, we want to create one Africa. Everybody speaking the same language. Yet, here's the African that says, I come from central part of Somalia. By the way, I'm from clan A, but I am sub-clan AA and sub-clan AAA and sub-clan, AAA or quadruple A. Yet you look at him and say, who are you? I mean, you look more or less the same thing. And by the way, we do face that, right? You all look alike, you're all Africans, therefore, what's the problem? Well, let me admit, even to some level myself, they all look alike on the other side as well. But is that healthy? In the long run, it's not healthy. So my topic then is that why, to look at the similarities and the differences in Africa. I'll start with language, which is the most used diversity index, the diversity tool that we do have. In the world, there are roughly about 6,000 languages, more or less, alive. 2,138 languages, or 30% of the languages alive today in the world is spoken in the continent of Africa. But at the same time, you do have Asia with almost 4 times the size of population in Africa, has only 32% of the languages spoken around the world, only 2% bigger than the African continent. 4 times the population, yet only Africa has 30% of the languages and Asia has 32% of the languages. Think about it for a moment. We are so diversified in the continent of Africa. We're not talking about even the socio-economics, the social culture, by the way, the looks. We do have the tallest people in the world. Maybe in South Sudan, I have visited Juba. I've seen towering jet black, blue black brothers who are like, you've seen Manute Bol, right?
Yeah.
I'm like a dwarfed guy, And then you, at the same time, you will see pygmies in Central Africa and in the Congo, the shortest people in the world. You will see languages, that are as diverse as we have Bantu language, we do have Cushitic language, we do have Arabic language, we do have Xhosa, the Khoisan language. There are like diversity of different linguistic groups that the continent has. You do have the lightest, the first skinned people, as well as the darkest people you will ever find. In Sudan alone, you have 2 distinct cutting, one from one side to another, and the other one is like this. And they look alike to you, but then again, I'm a Dinka, no, I am a Nuer, and what have you. So, Africa then, from that perspective, you do have so many different grouping in terms of language, in terms of feature, and then to come to the what you call the socio-economic, you do have anywhere from the people like the Twa, who are still hunter-gatherer in Uganda and Rwanda area. You do have the Bushmen in the Kalahari Desert. You do have the some of the pygmies who are still hunter-gatherers, and then you will move into the Nilotics, who are cattle, and the Somalis, who are camel. Actually, we are the craziest of all. To chase a camel is not an easy job. And then you do have people who are farmers, farming communities. Even when you stop and say, my God, if we look for, and this is, by the way, the early leaders of the continent, one of the things that they were looking for was just like, if we can only remove, these ethnic, and linguistic problems, we will become developed. Among them was Mwalimu Julius Nyerere of Tanzania. And one of the things that they were doing was that to create one language, Kiswahili, in Tanzania. Good. Some actually succeeded that in country like, for example, Rwanda and Burundi. They have succeeded in creating one language. But then again, we all remember what happened in 1994, where in 100 days, 1 million people have been eliminated. Now, what happened to ethnic affinity? I mean, ethno-linguistic, the language, homogenizing of the language, the creation of oneness out of this. So then, which then make your head scratch. In fact, when I was doing my dissertation, one of the things that have always been bothering to me was, well, if only, diversity in language, diversity in everything can be, homogenized. If you all speak one language, maybe the continent would not have had conflicts. But then again, when you crunch the numbers and do the statistics, you find out actually the more united a language diversity index is smaller, the more likely you will have a conflict. In fact, it's 0.88% to have a war when you have, the language is smaller as compared to when you do have this, which is actually 0.45. To give you an example, in Tanzania, you do have 130 different linguistic groups. And in Rwanda, which has a border with them, has only one language. 100% of the population speak Kinyarwanda. Nevertheless, Rwanda has destroyed it. They have destroyed each other, and Tanzania is still functioning. Which then actually, flies into the face of those who blame diversity, ethno-linguistic diversity, as the problem. The problem is a little bit much deeper than that, which was actually a counterintuitive. I remember my advisor and I had a debate on this for a while. That actually helped me for a few months, but I'm happy that I've proven my point. So then, with this diversity, then does not necessarily mean that the continent will remain in conflict, in poverty, and all of these things, but simply that all you do need to do is just to say we are rich, and we are rich because we do have different experiments, we do have different music, we do have different poetry, we do have different way of looking at things, explaining at things, and what have you. So the continent then, as you are all aware of, I'm not going to bother the size, like what is it, about like 3 times the size of the United States, 53 different countries, each and every one of them, ranging from Nigeria, which is like almost 200 million, to maybe small countries like Botswana and Mauritius and what have you. And these sizes, they do have any kind of a political diversity that they do have. Some have stability, some do not have stability. Nowadays we do have the Somalis flocking into this area. Why? Because we're running away from each other. We're good at killing each other. It's civil war, internal war, and that war then has created outflow of people to come to of all the places to here in Minnesota. You should see. I was with my mother this morning, and she saw this, and I was like, my God, what am I doing here? I don't blame my mom, because this is not even the birds and the big fish are smart enough to go south. I don't even know what are we doing here. So then on diversity, we do have a lot of diversity, whether it comes to language, whether it comes to social culture, whether it comes to socioeconomics. Although the continent had fallen behind in terms of human development index. For example, in 1960, Ghana alone had more GDP per capita than South Korea, Taiwan, and Hong Kong combined. And today, only South Korea has more GDP per capita than all sub-Saharan Africa. What have we done wrong? Where did we go wrong? Do we blame our diversity? Or do we blame our similarity, where the issue comes? But this panel is a little bit beyond that. Now, and by the way, in 1960, the continent's name was the continent of the future. And by 1980, which was only 20 or so years after its independence, things have started to fall apart. And then by the time the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, the continent had faced a huge turmoil. And using the late Professor Ali Mazrui, they said when two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers, which was pre-1990. And then he said, by the way, don't forget, when two elephants make love, still the grass that suffers. When the Russian and American became buddy-buddy, the continent did not do any better than that. So then the question is that when we migrated to the United States, a large number, 12–13% of the population of the United States are of African descent. And we did come, I came here about 30 years ago, and there was a guy literally asked me a question. This was in Georgia. He said, well, my brother, you look like me. Where are you from? I'm like, I'm from Africa. And he said, how did you get here? Well, I drove. I had a banged up old Malibu. I remember it's a green, that was my first car. And I told him, like, well, I drove from there. Really? How long did it take you? Believe it or not, from 1984 up to now, the progress that our brothers in the diaspora have made is night and day. I cannot get away with that gimmick today. The sophistication, the level of education and everything went up for our brothers. At least today, they know something called Somalian. In the 1980s, like, right on, brother, that was it. And thanks to people like my brother here, Dr. Fagan, who have been in the forefront in educating our brothers in the diaspora to understand that there is a continent, not a country. There is a continent with people, one of the tallest people in the world, the shortest people in the world, over more than 2,000 languages spoken, and everything and anything in between. I had been part of students going to study abroad in my former life in another university. One of the things that used to happen whenever we take students, in fact, the biggest shock you will see in the faces of the students from African American students. They're like, my God, there is a building. I'm like, yeah, literally, and this is a college student. Why? Because the problem, and this is actually an improvement from 1980s up to now is a huge improvement. So where we do stand now is that we do know our differences. We do know that we are different from each other. Not only are we different in the greater sense, but even at the micro level. Within your own family, there is a difference. You are unique. Each and every one of us is unique, regardless of who's your brother from the same mother and the same father. But should that take away from us to also build on that diversity and take advantage of our similarities? Well, let's come to the similarities. What are our similarities? Can 2 or 3 people volunteer for me to say 1 or 2 similarities? Of course, we're all handsome, I know that. Give me one. Where are we similar?
We all have the same origins.
Okay. Origins of West Africa, East Africa.
Yeah.
Where are you originated from?
I would love to know. I would love to know. That's
They're originally from Africa.
Yeah, exactly.
The country or the continent?
The continent. The continent.
Originally from Africa.
Right.
That's
Right.
point.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, everybody's from Africa, by the way. Even those of you who are the farthest, including you, the blonde hair. Don't forget that. We claim you at the end of the day. Now, we are similar. First of all, we are similar as humans, right? we all have the same desire. We all have pretty much, all living creatures, we do share certain things. But more important than that, people who live in the same area, people who have the same desire in college campuses and what have you, we also have, it's like you're peeling, until you come to one thing. And there is a Somali say, I'm sure my brother Fana knows about this, I and my clan against the world, I and my brother against my clan, I against my brother. So it's a deductive thinking where you start from the largest level. We are humans together, but then again, we are the same gender. We are female or male. Those non-thinking male, that we don't have that much, half of the brain that you guys have. Then, we are, students together. We speak the same language and all of these things. And as you see, we come at the same time. We at the same time that we're coming together, at the same time we're coming apart. I do remember when I first came here in the 1980s, in fact, for you to see anybody who looks like Somali, you would have been delighted. Because we were very few, we loved each other, we were gathering every Saturday, someone was, we would get something together. But unfortunately, as we become bigger and bigger, now it's like, who's your clansman? And who's your sub-clansman, who's your sub-sub-clansman, until you come, in fact, now we're, the children, some of the kids here are shooting each other. They're gangs, Somali gangs, who are, very good at killing each other instead of coming together. And then you scratch your head. I'm sure people like Dr. Fagan can attest to this. In the 1960s and in the 1950s, when the struggle was there, people were like, my brother, my sister, we've been together. Today we are much more sophisticated, we have more money, we have more fame. Similarly, like the Somalis are not liking each other, also our brothers in the diaspora are facing the same dilemma. What is happening? What's at work? I do not have the answer, but it is something that you do need to think about. Those who struggled in the 60s and the 50s, the Martin Luther Kings, the Malcolm X's, the Black Panthers, and all of these people, Muhammad Ali, all of these people who have struggled to bring the bread into the table, at least a portion of the bread, yet today we are more diverse. Schools are more diversified. The achievement gap, of course, we all know is not there. Yet you do have the ability to do something, for yourself. Same thing, by the way. Somalis who came, the monks, all the communities that came, the first generation that struggled to do things for themselves and open doors for the others. Although I'm not that old, but I'm scratching my head and saying, these young guys now who come with, who graduated from high school in here, yet he's just sitting around, thumbing his nose and doing nothing. What is the problem here? Our similarities come, whether we do come from the continent, or we've been here for so long. Those who are, in the twilight, or who are to disappear, but who have done a lot of work over the years, and they're looking at this new generation who have all these opportunities, yet they're not doing anything about it. So the similarity here is then the new generation, regardless of whether they were here for half a millennia, or they just came, their parents still speak with accents. They do have this problem. They are good in getting to jails more than they're good in getting to universities. Of course, the girls are a little bit much better than our boys. So now, this similarity then, as students of in universities, the future, the people of tomorrow, who have all these opportunities, no excuses whatsoever. The question is, why do we have this similarity? I'm sure every African American parent is scratching his head, asking the same question as a Somali immigrant who ran away, to the United States for safety and development. They are facing more or less the same dilemma, the same problem. This is our, the similarity that we do have. Of course, not to mention, the affinity, because the person who looks like you actually gives you comfort. If they speak the same language, is more, comfort. If you are that person and you can talk about the same thing and laugh about the same thing, it will give you even greater comfort for you to be happy with that person. So the question, but it comes back to, why is the achievement gap happening? And by the way, it's not only happening for the Somalis, it is happening also for our brothers who look like us. The African Americans are not faring any better than the African immigrants. And this is happening, I have no idea, but at least let me point to one thing that I think the issue is. And the one thing is pretty much, you guys have become, the young generation have become too much comfortable. There's Facebook, there is, what is the future? And nowadays, actually, future and present are actually getting combined and mixed. Now the question is then, should we face this as a community, as people who look alike, as people who are moving together and all of these things? And the answer is yes. What is your job? Your job is, as the people who are lucky enough to come to colleges, is that not only do you show by example, getting the good grades, moving into the, but also opening the door and pulling up those behind you that are that should achieve that, even if you have to beat them into senses. Simply, now the disjoint is that you may have a whole family of maybe a father, mother, and 5, 6 kids, but nobody is working to help nobody else. You may not even know who your brother is. You may not even know who your sister is. There is the telephone, there is the iPad, there is the laptop, and all of these things. Maybe technology has improved humanity, but also it has reduced the social cultural value and the joint between parent and children, and it's just a disjoint. Everybody lives in his own or her own island. Nobody is to be beaten to lose his lunch money. Now actually there was a school bully problem. I've been bullied, but I survived. But what it gave me was skills that I could never learn from any classroom at all. That guy who was beating me in the 21st, 21 October, the school that I went to elementary. I mean, it was. And nowadays, we are like, oh, there is a school bully. I'm sorry, I don't mean to come against this, but come on, how is this kid going to survive in the long run? So all of these things are pretty much what we do have nowadays in common and in similarity. And if we do not talk about how to deal with it today, then it might be too late one of these days. Finally, I would like to talk about as communities who look alike. It was not a coincidence that people like Garvey and Du Bois and the forefathers of the Pan-Africanism to look for a homeland. Even as early as people who went to Liberia, the Americo-Liberians, they were longing for a land, for a homeland. That's not a coincidence. In fact, I'll give you an example. I was teaching a class in Wayne State, actually, called ethnicity. Simply, it was called ethnicity. And the class had actually the best class so far that I had. This was way back in 2000. And the class had equal, male, female, age, and race. It's kind of like an equal. So we used to sit in around, and among the things that the final part of the class was assimilation. How do you assimilate? So one of the proposals is to have as much intermarriages as possible, so that it goes on. In fact, intermarriage is a very valuable tool of conflict resolution as well. In our culture in Somalia, for example, when two clans fight and then they come, to talk to each other, they swap. So like maybe 20 girls from this family and 20 girls. So once you have blood ties, then conflicts will ease down as time progresses. The same thinking mindset that many of the societies in the world have. One lady and one guy who was the guy he was white and the lady, they were more or less in their 60s, and then why don't the guy being very liberal said, why don't we have mass interracial marriages so that this racism can come to an end? And I learned this lesson very well. The lady said, wait. She said, I do have, she said, 2 or 3 daughters, and Masa, over the years, have messed up with our color. We don't look the way we looked or the way we should, and all of these things. Many of us are not correct. I want at least one of my daughters to have a bouncy, very black baby boy in my lap that I call my grandson. I'm like, wow. That simply means that the affinity that you do have to your culture, to your language, is always going to be there strongly to lead you into the way you think, the way you view into the world. So now, one of the things that the United States is a superpower now, and there is actually a competition among ethnic groups to influence the government of the United States towards their people. You do have the Jewish lobby, you do have the German lobby, you have the Japanese lobby, and all of these things. All of them roaming around the capital city and the White House. The Capitol Hill and the White House. Why are they doing it? Well, the Congressional Black Caucus over the years have been trying, to do this, but the problem is that the continent is too big, it's too diverse, and who do we influence and for what? The last time that the African American community was together was the South African apartheid. Why? Because South African apartheid is similar to the experience here in the continent. That similarity was the one who was right. But then again, when the 1994 genocide was happening, not much has been happening. Congressional Black Caucus and on all of these things. So to educate then yourself in the continent that the continent from Cape to Cairo matters to you. Its progress literally means your progress. One of the things that I would like to really leave with you is that try your very best to understand, try your very best to advocate. You can only advocate anything when you're educated about it. You cannot advocate anything unless you do know what you're advocating about. Somalis, for example, you are here, you are citizens. One of your jobs is to go and lobby, even here in St. Paul, Washington, D.C., for the betterment of our country. But then again, unfortunately, we are very good in bickering and backbiting each other and using minute division of, I am from this sub clan. I'm going to leave you, here that part of your job is to educate yourself and then look forward and advocate. And most important of all, make sure that you develop first yourself, and then and only then can you move on. I stop here. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, the floor, I think. You should be the one who was saying, Okay, I'll do my own sharing. Yes? Okay.
I'd like to ask a few questions that have you respond to them. Troubling to me, as I look at first, second generation immigrant, is the drifting away from cultural values, family, traditions. Certainly it is obvious in whatever Paris says we should wear, everybody wears, and
Yeah.
we see that this is happening
And carry it out.
substantially with younger generations. I know in Somalia it was possible to pull your pants up.
Yep.
I see on Lake Street, it is only gravity that holds young men's pants. And that's troubling to me.
Mm-hmm.
With all of these people who look alike,
Mm-hmm.
I know that the value of individualism so heavily ingrained in Western thought and culture has impacted everyone, and I see it impacting substantially our new African immigrants. What can the Somali communities and its leaders do to try to turn some of that around? Or do you see it as a problem, and do you have any ideas of how we can turn some of that around?
Well, there are two aspects to it. First of all, it is inevitable for immigrant community to lose some of its culture. And not only immigrant communities, but even transgenerational parenting. Like, for example, my father and I wanted to keep a little afro when I was like in 4th grade, and he was one of those people you have to have a haircut every Thursday. So I would hide myself and have a little bit of afro, because every Thursday he used to give me like a small money to go and take a bus and get a haircut from his friend. And the friend will just make you sit there and just has this thing, just give you crew cut, as if you're in a military camp. And he was in the military, he was a British soldier. So living in the same country, and then of course my pants and the way I was dressing, the way I was looking, I was seeing movies, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly actually was one of the best movies that I've ever seen. My dad and I were living in the same household, within the same cultural context, yet we were kind of drifting apart. So there is that much inevitability, first of all, of generational move. But when then that culture is imported into another culture, then it becomes even much bigger, because there's a greater influence of other things. Today, not only that, but also what we do have is technology. In fact, I met a very old guy, African American in Georgia, and he said, "Son, the worst 2 inventions that mankind has made